we've had over the last few years. Very sort of iterative, I think. Discussions ongoing at the moment with government around future sort of policy. Then I'll talk a bit about AELP's manifesto asks. One of our asks is about a root and branch review of functional skills qualifications. So our big drive is around the exit requirement around apprenticeships, but we know that there are kind of wider challenges on functional skills around content and assessment, which impacts a range of other programs as well. I know there's some real sort of challenges around 16 to 19 conditions of funding, which kind of cut across that as well, that aspect. You probably would have noticed we've got a new government who are now in place. Talk about some of their policy commitments. One of their policy commitments is a curriculum and assessment review of maths and English qualifications. So I'll sort of touch on that. So it's already on their radar. I'll talk a bit about some of the academic research that AELP has done previously on functional skills, some of the recommendations, some of the findings. Really sort of mini commissions is a move to become a bit more fleet of foot, gather more data to help inform decisions and support officials to kind of shift the dial with ministers. I've got an interesting slide on some pass rate data by some of the main awarding organisations on functional skills. I think I've got some data from Pearson, Sitting Guilds and NCFE. Not surprisingly, unfortunately, level 2 maths is particularly a challenge, but we'll kind of focus on some of the previous messaging, where we are around kind of pass rates on functional skills. And then we'll spend a bit of time at the end talking about the mini commissions, sort of purpose, timeline, how to get involved. Really critical. We get more data from members to show the impact of the policy is for us is the missing bit of the jigsaw with functional skills. So I think we're on a bit of a journey. I think officials are very much recognised as a challenge, but we need to be able to give them the evidence about what the impact is, and we'll loop back on that at the end, and then we've got some time for some question and answers as well. So just to I mean, this seems like yesterday, but just to kind of recap, I mean, reform functional skills came in autumn 2019, which I think was quite recently, but that's a long time ago. I guess the other thing to kind of remember back in 2019, you know, larger qualifications, more guided learning hours, also some challenges at the time around invigilation requirements for the new for the reform qualifications as well. So back in 2019, I think one of the challenges that we've been sort of working through over the years has we got off to a bit of a false start with reform functional skills, because we had the pandemic in 2020. We had this period of teacher assessed grades and centre assessed grades, which probably masked some of those issues, which kind of bubbled to the surface in the kind of following years as well. So I think that sort of muddied the water around how quickly some of the challenges around reform functional skills came to the surface. So I think it's important to sort of recognise that as part of this journey. But you know, going back to what I was saying earlier, you know, we've been sort of chipping away with DfE around trying to get the policy to be more deliverable. I mean, ultimately, I think one of the kind of key blockers historically around the exit requirement on functional skills has been getting ministers to sign off a change. You know, Gillian Keegan was a very risk-averse Secretary of State. Her boss, the Prime Minister, had a big agenda of maths to 18. So everything was, you know, she was ultimately a blocker. So there's a big opportunity, I think, with the new government for a renewed push. But just to kind of talk about some of the, or recap on some of the changes we have had over the last couple of years on policy with functional skills. So level 2 apprentices, so about a third of level 2 apprentices benefited from the change of if they were able to, if they started at lower level 1, and they passed their level 1 with less than sort of 3 months before gateway, we removed the rule around having to arbitrarily take the level 2 assessments or with very limited probability of passing. We know that there are some apprentices who just refused that and they dropped out, and that was a terribly arbitrary and damaging rule. So that was a good move. That benefited about 1 in 3 level 2 apprentices. Slight new change in the rules for next year on that, which gives providers a bit more grace around this sort of 3 months before gateway. So in essence, it's up to the provider to ascertain or make a professional judgment now about will they have enough time to make meaningful progress. So that kind of came in a couple of years ago. Kind of one of the big changes around functional skills was an increase in funding rate on work-based programs. This was announced at Tory Party conference in September 2023. It was going to be implemented in August 2024, actually, but so this was actually brought forward after quite a lot of lobbying. So a 55% increase in functional skills funding rates, which was an increase in funding, obviously always welcome. It brought it in line with rates on classroom-based courses, but still not high enough, but still quite a significant financial commitment around deliverability of functional skills qualifications. So, and then as we head towards the new year, we've had this pilot for learners with LLDD or SEND needs, a really successful pilot that's just kind of come to conclusion around learners at lower starting points and been able to undertake entry level 3 programs, alternatives. Now I'll talk about that on the next slide. So iteratively, we have been kind of chipping away at some of the policy, but the kind of big policy and the kind of blocker remains a challenge. So just to kind of look ahead at some of the changes that are coming in from next month. So sort of building on that pilot I was talking about. So one of the challenges we know with some learners is being able to get a education healthcare plan. So this new flexibility coming in that you don't necessarily have to have an EHCP plan to access these flexibilities for alternative entry level 3 qualifications. So new rules which talk about if providers undertake a robust evidence-based assessment delivered by a professionally competent person, for example, a head of SEND. So it doesn't mean you've got to have a head of SEND. It's basically saying that if you've got someone who's professionally competent and you do a thorough assessment, you do have that flexibility to put people on lower level entry 3 qualifications for maths and English. And so I think that's a good sort of sensible move. I think it'd be an area that sort of Ofsted will focus on about, are you doing the right people, putting people on the right program more than a compliance thing with the ESFA. A couple of other changes. So DfE will be removing the need from August to take an assessment within 8 weeks of starting the program. So a bit more flexibility about when that takes place. Those changes will apply to sort of new learners and carryover learners as well. And then just the point at the bottom really that I can't say too much on this, but you know, we've been having ongoing discussions with officials, and I personally think we are very much on the same boat. You know, I think back in 2019, 2020, when we started to talk about some of the challenges around formal and functional skills, to kind of paraphrase, the sort of messaging was providers just need to get on with it, really. But you know, I think certainly officials within the apprenticeship team and some point in other parts of DfE recognise some of the challenges around functional skills. So there were a number of other changes that were in the pipeline ahead of the start of the year, which had been agreed but haven't come out because of the pre-election period, and it's unclear whether they will progress or not. So all I can say on that is, you know, is to offer a bit of reassurance that officials are certainly in our camp, that they recognise there are some challenges with the qualifications, they're holding back achievement. And this is why we need to be able to give them more evidence to help them with arguments with new ministers as well. So we've made some iterative progress. I think we've got kind of officials on board. We just need to keep doubling down on trying to drive some of the changes forward. So on to the next slide, Madhvi, please. So a little bit about AELP's manifesto asks. We've got our 6 asks here. You've probably sort of seen these. Fairly straightforward. National skills strategy. Labour have actually committed to a post-16 skills strategy, which is good. We want that to be kind of long-term. Needs to be at least 5 years rather than sort of piecemeal. We obviously want an apprenticeship system that works for all employers, all learners. Opportunities for young people. You know, we've got nearly 1 million young people who are NEET. More opportunities for them. Lifelong learning guarantee for adults. I'll come back to number 5, and number 6 is giving learners choice, so rather than institutional bias. But one of our key manifesto asks is a root and branch review of how maths and English is delivered and assessed through the education system. So that's not just about apprenticeships. We need to make sure the qualifications, functional skills are fit for purpose the assessments are deliverable, and they, doesn't hold back completion, and learners been able to progress. So that is looking at a range of scenarios where Maths and English is those are the qualifications and how they're applied on different funding programs, and I've talked about some of those a little bit earlier. So just on to the next slide, Madhvi, please. So unless you've been hidden away, you've obviously seen we've got a new Labour government. We've always had lots of questions about who are going to be the main people for Labour. A bit of a surprise for some that Seema Malhotra didn't get a job in the education team. She's actually got a job in the Home Office. So the key people really for us in our sector, no surprise really, Bridget Phillipson is the Secretary of State for Education. I think it'll focus very much on early years and childcare as a sort of her kind of favourite sort of focus. But really, the key person for us in our sector will be Jackie Smith. Jackie Smith isn't actually an MP. She is joining the House of Lords, and she's going to have an extremely wide brief, which includes HE, FE, skills, and apprenticeships. So she's going to be the person you're probably going to hear more from, and there's certainly the person that will be engaging on as well. But I know officials in the apprenticeship team met her 2 days ago to kind of start off her induction, and senior officials in DFE did tell us that one of the things on the list as part of her induction when they saw her 2 days ago was to talk to her about the situation around functional skills. So again, that offers some reassurance that we all are pushing in the same direction, and this is an opportunity to shift the dial on the policy. But you've probably seen a lot of these sort of Labour's ambition. Skills England, obviously a key piece of the jigsaw moving forward. I don't think that will just be about apprenticeships. That could, I think there'll be a lot of change around organisations like the Institute for Apprenticeships. Skills England will have a kind of key role on a number of priorities, flexibilities, not just on apprenticeships. Talked about the post-16 skills strategy. Big commitment to move to a skills and growth levy. We were starting to talk about that with officials when we met them for a bit of an update. So these things are starting to pick up pace. They talk about sort of flexibilities around young people, a pre-apprenticeship program like traineeships, a modular upskilling, youth guarantee for young people, local growth plans, probably a bit of a proxy for what were local skills improvement plans, and a number of things in there, a commitment to pause and review level 3 defunding. But the one I just really wanted to focus on for a moment is Labour's commitment to a review of Maths and English curriculum and assessment. So how I sort of describe some of this is, we're not talking into the wind. The kind of officials are on board broadly. Labour are committed to looking at more broadly at kind of curriculum and assessment, and we just need a joined up approach to push in the right direction. Sometimes you feel like you're pushing against a closed door. There's definitely a kind of open door on some of these things, and this is why it's really important to strike whilst the iron's hot to shift the dial after various sort of years of iterative progress. Let's kind of have a concerted push. So that's sort of Labour's ambition. I guess just to kind of say that we're in a sort of short window now before summer recess. Summer recess will be the end of July, but certainly ministers are getting up to speed on their new briefs. I know Ben, our CEO's at Sanctuary Buildings today to meet some of the new MPs and parliamentarians as part of a reception with DFE. So things are starting to happen at pace after a 6-week blackout period for pre-election activity. So next slide, please, Madhvi. As kind of part of our work on mini commissions, we also wanted to do a bit of a literature review and some of the work that we've done. AELP's done 2/3. We've actually got another piece of work that's coming out as referenced there, academic research on some of the challenges of functional skills policy and some of the recommendations. And this is the most recent one, which came out in January 2024. Spelling it out, make it count. Quite a substantial piece of research sponsored by Gatsby and Edge. And a number of these things, I guess, have been looked at, and we've had discussions with officials, talking about, should maths and English be contextualized within standards rather than standalone? Do you need different approaches to exemptions, different approaches to assessment? Are functional skills qualifications functional enough? Are they differentiated enough? Again, shining a light on level 2 maths, which I'll kind of come on to in a moment when you start to look at the pass rates. Level 2 maths generally, but level 2 maths stands out like a sore thumb. So a number of things that have kind of been in the mix, some research there that we did back in January 2024. As I mentioned, we're in the final sort of throes of publishing some more research with Edge and Gatsby on probably in the next sort of 6 weeks, kind of building on that. So a bit of an evidence base about some of the challenges. If you've not seen Spell It Out, Make It Count, it's worth having a look at that one. If you could just move on to the next slide, Madhvi, thanks. And the other piece of research just to mention, so we did some research back in February 2023. This was more broadly around apprenticeships and how do we work together collectively to increase the overall apprenticeship achievement rate. The achievement rate on apprenticeships is improving, but it's still a long way off the previous government's ambition of getting to 67% by September 2025. A bit of a context there about the work that we did generally, and specifically around sort of functional skills, with some recommendations that came out of the research. Again, it was about making sure the content of functional skills, it is functional. It needs to kind of link ideally to the occupational sort of job role rather than being kind of too generic. And again, this idea about studying towards maths and English, so making it a condition of funding rather than an exit requirement, and bring it in line with sort of T-levels and 16 to 19 programs. Got to be careful what you wish for. As I mentioned earlier, sort of 16 to 19 condition of funding, ramping up significantly into the next year, and some changes around tolerances, which certainly under review, but are challenges as well. So a bit of a reference there to some of the research that we've done previously on this, but it's about data. Data is really critical, and getting that data about the impact of some of these policies is what we're working towards, and why we need your help. So just on to the next slide, Madhvi. Thank you. Just a very sort of quick slide here. This is published data sample. Well, not sample, I've taken a sample. I think there's only 6 or 7 awarding organisations that offer functional skills qualifications. City and Guilds is the largest in terms of size. So I've got the last set of published pass rates, which is for 22-23. The top box there is from Pearson. The box on the right is from NCFE, and the box at the bottom with the green tab is taken from City and Guilds. And obviously it shows the pass rates, first time pass rates, overall pass rates. As I've already mentioned, maths level 2, or maths generally, but maths level 2 continues to be the outlier program. So, in terms of the area that's kind of causing the most sort of challenges, I'm sure you guys are delivering this sort of day in, day out. Definite sort of challenges around first time pass rates too low, but overall pass rates, you look at some of the overall pass rates on Pearson. I mean, these are, this is no reflection on the AOs, because the qualifications are leveled, so they're supposed to be consistent. So generally, usually there's very little variation between awarding organisations. But you look at overall pass rates on with Pearson for maths and maths level 1, level 2, less than 40% overall. And similarly very low for other awarding organisations. So some of those stand out very much like a sore thumb. So the data is really important. You're probably aware of those, but important kind of narrative to consider as part of this work. Next slide, Madhvi, please. So that brings us on to our mini commission. So mini commission is very much Ben, our CEO's big idea, much more about evidence-based. So mini commissions, our aim is to run probably 3 or 4 mini commissions a year, focusing on one specific issue. So not the only thing we focus on, but put a concerted push on a relevant hot sort of topic, you know, areas that we know there's interest in, there's movement in, we need more evidence. You know, some of the other things that we might look at around mini commissions after functional skills, possibly things like qualification achievement rates or how you measure success, but that's to be sort of agreed. But we know active discussions with officials, new ministers previously have blocked some of the policy. Opportunity for a new government, let's sort of aggregate what we've done, get some more data, and then try and drive a change. I think this is a golden opportunity with a window. So as I said, it's about getting more robust, timely evidence from providers, and I'll talk about how we intend to do that and some of the key questions and some of the data points that we're looking to show the impact on functional skills. So to make this work, we need to harness our membership really, and we need providers to support us, because, you know, there's such power in being able to aggregate and evidence some of the challenges around functional skills. So mini commissions, new, this is the first one. We launched at the conference. Functional skills is first on the list, and we'll do 3 or 4 of these a year, but this is very much our first one, focusing with a laser focus on some of the challenges around functional skills. Next slide, Mavi, please. So yeah, just to sort of summarize sort of mini commissions and why they're important. So you know, one of the key messages with the new Labour government is that they are very, very data focused. Ministers, as I mentioned, Jackie Smith's got a massive brief. You know, she won't necessarily be into the detail as much as somebody like Robert Halfon, who had a much more narrow brief. So data-based decisions going to be even more critical around some of the policy making. So we probably haven't been as effective as we could have been around data and using, you know, the power of the membership to gather intel and data to help kind of shift the dial on policy. Too much anecdote, less not enough evidence based. We've got this sort of academic research about how do we quantify what the impact is on policy. So it's really about providing evidence of the unintended damaging consequences of the existing policy, how we can drive this forward and kind of shift the dial. So very much the sort of key messages that we want to sort of focus mini commissions on. Next slide, please, Mavi. So mini commission 1, it's kicking off this month. We've got a bit of a timeline on the following couple of slides and how to get involved, but it's really, we want to have a real sort of focus on assessing the impact of the consequences of functional skills policy, certainly within apprenticeships, but also kind of wider policy as well, thinking about the impact on the FE workforce and on students themselves who have to keep going back through the cycle, backwards and forwards and forwards. But at the heart is very much a focus on what's the data impact, and I think the next slide we'll talk about the key questions that are in our survey. So we're kind of very mindful that you know, we don't ask loads of questions. We think there are some key areas that are really impactful in terms of being able to evidence the impact of functional skills policy. So there's sort of 5 areas that we're really keen to harness the power of the membership, and I'll kind of go through these. So it's really so thinking about the apprentices who are on programme at the moment, we need to be able to quantify how many of those and aggregate that have gone past their planned end date because they simply can't pass their functional skills qualifications. So we know there's a huge sort of challenge at the moment around out of funded apprentices or past planned end dates, but we need to be able to quantify that. When we talk to DFE, they're not cited on that. So they just know there's a big issue about past planned end dates. But from ILR data, it's not always clear to them that, say, 30%, 50%, 70% of learners who have gone past their planned end dates and can't complete are because they can't pass functional skills. So that's some data we know from talking to DFE in terms of learners who are currently on programme, how we can shine a light on the impact of those who could complete, who are being held back. So being able to quantify learners who are out of funding as a result of functional skills, really, really powerful. It's a missing bit of the jigsaw that DFE tell us that they haven't got. The second bit is around thinking about apprentices who've withdrawn and not been able to complete their apprenticeship just because of functional skills. I mean, we have this really odd policy where you can't go through and complete your endpoint assessment and you can't be certified as competent until you've passed your functional skills. So again, we know that we need to get to the bottom of how many of the withdrawals are down to they couldn't pass their functional skills. So again, this is very much another issue that DfE are unable to quantify. They just have a big list of X amount of learners who withdraw, but they have very limited intel. So thinking about those first two things, what's the impact of learners who've gone past planned end dates and unlikely to complete, and drilling down into reasons for withdrawal, how many of those are down to the fact that they couldn't pass functional skills for whatever reason? So really important. DfE don't have that. Really powerful, those two. Now, the third bit is we want to think about and understand employer and provider behaviour and how this might be restricting who can undertake an apprenticeship. So, you can see job adverts which say, for a range of apprenticeship programs from level 2 to level 7, you need to have a pass in maths and English to apply for the program. So, we have functional skills qualifications to enable disadvantaged young people or adults to undertake an apprenticeship and improve their maths and English. But we're seeing more and more where employers are saying, actually, let's set the threshold here, because we don't want to give apprentices additional time off on top of the off-the-job hours to do maths and English, because they're more unproductive when they have to do the study for maths and English. And then we're also seeing some providers who are saying, too much a risk to us, damaging our achievement rates. We need to sort of cherry pick learners who've already got an exemption because they're more likely to complete. The cost of delivering functional skills outweighs the funding that we get. So we're setting an artificially high. So the impact on sort of social mobility for the most disadvantaged, who are the ones who need the most support, what does that look like? And are we seeing more of that from a provider and an employer perspective? So our employers saying to providers, these are the thresholds, I don't really care. We don't want to kind of release learners. So being able to understand that position, is that kind of increasing? What does that look like? That's quite damaging when you think about, Labour got a big commitment around 18 to 21-year-old, a youth guarantee, more young people getting into apprenticeships, but actually, is that a barrier to stop them getting on? And the kind of final parts of the survey is shining a light on the impact on mental health of functional skills qualifications from both an apprentice perspective, a learner perspective, and also delivery staff. So, if you've got an apprentice who's having to do functional skills over and over again, and they fail 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, what is the impact of that? Are learners refusing to take the exams? Are they dropping out? What's the impact on their mental health? But we also want to look at and understand any examples or any sort of scenarios around mental health impact on FE delivery staff as well. And then as part of the survey, we want to obviously be able to capture any good practice around functional skills delivery that's been effective to help improve retention achievement rates as well. So just to kind of recap on those, we want to kind of understand the sort of current picture of learners who are past planned end date due to functional skills, understand a better picture about withdrawals linked to unable to complete functional skills and it stopped them completing their apprenticeship. What are the restrictions? Is that changing? Is that impacting who can participate on an apprenticeship? What's the impact in terms of mental health of the current policies it is at the moment for apprentices and for your staff? And then also an opportunity to kind of capture any good practice about how functional skills delivery has been delivered more effectively by you as providers. It's important to say part of the survey, it is anonymised. So we're not asking for information specifically from name providers. I think examples around things like mental health for apprentices and delivery staff. Again, we're not necessarily looking for names of people, but we could do with more example scenarios about how that's impacting staff, how that might be impacting learners. So the more information we can get on that, really powerful. And it's really about being able to quantify, most of the things we're looking for is actual data to be able to then sort of extrapolate and aggregate in terms of the overall impact of where we are on the policy. So very much a sort of call to evidence. In terms of timeline, so we kind of talked about the mini commissions at the national conference a couple of weeks ago. We've got some briefing sessions this week. Obviously, one today. We've got another one tomorrow. We're working with the regional networks to kind of distribute this kind of message and get them involved. It's about volume's really important for us. You know, get as many providers to contribute to be able to give a substantive evidence base. Part of this is going to be done through a survey. The survey will be launching imminently. I think it might even be linked in the slides. Appreciate that it is July. I've been there as a provider. It's year end. Everyone's kind of working extremely busy to get everyone through. So we are closing the survey at the early part of August. So we've got a good month period to be able to respond to the survey. A lot of it is headline data about volumes that we're asking for. We're then going to sort of spend at the late part of the summer looking at the data, creating assimilating the data, looking at the trends. I'd say part of this, part of the mini commissions have, you know, we've already been talking to officials about this piece of work. I was talking to number 10 policy unit about this a couple of weeks ago. They're really interested. So, you know, this is not just, we're going to do a bit of research, lob it over the fence and go, here you go, what are you going to do about it? I know Ben's been going around as part of his work, talking to officials at Ofsted, at DFE, at the ESFA and others. So we've already sort of warmed up officials about this is coming. They're interested in it. They're interested in more data. Like I say, officials in DFE are interested in more kind of data to help them with their discussions, like I say, with new ministers. So it's about continuing that conversation rather than just say, we've done a piece of research, isn't it great? It's about holding officials to account. And we will be publishing more information on this, and we'll be linking back at our autumn conference on the 7th of November, where, as you can imagine, a post-pre-election period will have a range of officials and hopefully MPs where we see kind of what progress we've made. Again, it's about holding officials to account. They say they're going to look at it. What are they going to do about it? The evidence is clear. Let's kind of make a decision rather than based on data rather than anecdote. So that's sort of timeline. We've got kind of a month for asking providers over the next sort of month to respond to the survey. Onto the next slide, please. This is our last slide before we've got some time for questions. So we have launched a dedicated web page on mini commissions, which you can access. Will be accessible in the slide pack that will probably get sent out afterwards. It really sort of lays out the case, what I've talked about. It talks about some of the links to the research and recommendations that we've done. It's got a link to the survey as well, more information about the mini commissions as well. So some more resource that we'll be pushing out around what the case for change is, what the timeline is, how to get involved, what are some other areas of interest around maths and English policy challenges more widely. So that's that. So that's me finished talking for 40 minutes. Have we got any comments or any kind of questions on mini commissions, how to get involved? We think they're the right questions, certainly around apprenticeships, kind of focus on those issues. Has anybody got any sort of questions or comments or observations on what we're trying to achieve, how they can